Well, hello there, everybody. I'm Russ Reed, and I'm a co-PI of InnovATEBIO, which is a National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Center grant for the biotechnology education. And I'm delighted today because we have Dr. Bryant Moore with us, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and a very experienced person having worked in the biomedical device industry for a long period of time and having retired from that and gone to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We're delighted to have him today with us to speak to the participants of the Leadership Institute of InnovATEBIO. Along with me, I have Dr. Tom Tubon from Madison Community College. And Tom, very, very nice to see you and Bryant.
Good to see you, Russ. Dr. Moore?
Yep, likewise, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And backing us up today, as usual, is Sean Killebrew from Forsyth Technical Community College, who serves to make sure that this session goes well and that it's recorded and that it's in good shape for our participants. So Dr. Bryant Moore, welcome to InnovATEBIO. Welcome to the Leadership Institute. I would first like to just start a little bit with the background of InnovATEBIO, if I may, and that is that InnovATEBIO is the National Center for Biotechnology Education. It is a NSF ATE Center grant. It's based out of Austin Community College in Texas, and it's a multi-site grant of the magnitude of $7.5 million. And one of the things that we've noticed over time is that technician education is extremely important in the biosciences. So before I go any further, I just want to ask you, Dr. Moore, to introduce yourself to the participants.
Well, thank you, Russ. And again, it's a pleasure to be here and to be a part of the InnovATEBIO program today and the Bioscience Leadership Institute program. So I'm going to give you here just an overview of my background, and for the students, I've included it for your future reference. But as Russ mentioned, I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at UNC Chapel Hill. I joined the office in 2015 after more than a 30-year career in the medical device industry. My experience has been a senior leadership position within the medical device industry, product and technology development and clinical diagnostics, endoscopy, sports medicine, cardiology, and ophthalmology. Prior to coming to UNC, I was global head of refractive R&D at Abbott Medical Optics, and basically the technologies that we developed there were laser-based technologies for repairing refractive errors in the eye to improve the vision, so LASIK surgery. Prior to Abbott, I worked at Medtronic for 10 years in their cardiac disease rhythm management business at the vice president level with a range of responsibilities there in their cardiac rhythm disease management business. Prior to Medtronic, 3 years at Smith & Nephew as worldwide head of R&D for their endoscopy business, minimal invasive surgery for sports medicine and some endoscopic surgery. And before Smith & Nephew, I worked at Johnson & Johnson for 10 years in a range of different positions. When I got close to leaving J&J, I was vice president of product development and technology, vice president of assay R&D at Ortho Clinical Diagnostics. And before that, I worked at Organon Technica, a part of AkzoNobel, which is a Dutch company, but they had a division here in North Carolina in the RTP area. And I started my career at the DuPont company in Wilmington, Delaware as a scientist there at their central research facility. I earned my bachelor's degree in chemistry at North Carolina A&T and my PhD in biochemistry at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Dr. Moore, you have had a wonderful career, and we are very, very honored to have you at the Leadership Institute. And I would like to turn this over now to my colleague, Dr. Thomas Tubon.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks, Dr. Moore. So a little bit about the Leadership Institute for InnovATEBIO. The Institute is a 12-month professional development program for the bioscience community stakeholders, and we're directing our efforts at community college and K-12 instructors that represent our next generation of leaders. The Leadership Institute itself gives our participants the opportunity to interact with very seasoned industry, workforce, and academic experts such as you, Dr. Moore, and help us to define many of the concepts that help to create our next generation of leaders. So we cover leadership, but importantly, not from the academic perspective, but from an industry and workforce perspective. The program that we hope will be developed in the next 12 months will stress strategy, problem solving, and people leadership. And the Institute engages our senior industry workforce and academic experts as its subject matter experts as we move forward. So that's a little bit about the Leadership Institute, and we are extremely thankful for your involvement and your willingness to advocate for our next generation of leaders, Dr. Moore. So with that, back to you, Russ.
Dr. Moore, thanks, and Tom, thanks. Dr. Moore, the presentation is yours, and as you know, you just heard Tom say problem solving, so we really look forward to this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and again, thanks to Tom and all of you who have made this this program possible. But looking forward to future success as well. So, what I'd like to do for the students, participants of the program, is to give you a little bit of background in terms of what the case that I'm going to talk about in a little more detail in a few minutes is going to focus on. And it's going to focus on, to no surprise, new product development and the role that it plays in business growth. One of the key tenets that I want all the students to keep in mind is that for business to improve its competitive position, products must have performance features that are much better than the competition to gain market share. R&D is a primary business component that drives the creation of new products, but it's not the only component. Marketing, manufacturing, quality, regulatory, supply chain, and sales are also critical for successful introduction of successful performing products in the marketplace. And many times ideas for new products and systems come not necessarily only from R&D, but from marketing and manufacturing, and from feedback on quality issues in the marketplace from customers. Sometimes, however, technology developed by the internal R&D engine is not sufficient to keep up with the competitive need of the business, the need of the business to innovate and to deliver new products at a rate required by the business for growth. Therefore, it's necessary for businesses to form, in many cases, alliances and collaborations with startup companies, technology centers, licensing technology in from universities, and even the relationships with other established businesses to create new products and new systems to drive growth. So during this case, you will focus on some of the critical technical components and technical elements, challenges, and skill sets needed to engage in collaborations to develop new technology and products to the marketplace to sustain the business. So the case, I wanted to take this opportunity to provide you a snapshot of what this case is focused on. As I mentioned earlier, is to develop a new product and development plan and the business strategy. That's the overarching case. A little bit about the problem, the deliverables, and I have a little hint included in this, is that the problem is as follows. The business that you're associated with needs to upgrade its portfolio and add a new diagnostic assay to its product pipeline so the company can be more competitive and grow revenue in the marketplace. What is your deliverable? The deliverable will be a product plan and business narrative focused on delivering a novel diagnostic assay to the marketplace in collaboration with an external partner. And I put this in as a hint, is that the new product contains a novel recombinant protein that is integrated into a synthetic liposome carrier. Now, I want to emphasize here is that you're not supposed to try to figure out what this protein is, what the carrier is, or what its use is. I'm just trying to frame the point here that since this is focused on biosciences, that this is a bioscience technology product that you are developing. It is an assay to measure something, You don't need to know necessarily what that something is. You can create that something in your own mind, and we'll have an opportunity to talk more about it. But it's how to put together a plan and how to develop a strategy with these elements. Now, a little bit about new product development. I'm sure that you are aware in general, but since a large part of this focus is to give an industry perspective on leadership and the development of technology, I have just a couple of framework slides here for you to think about. The central theme and overarching theme really is that science in the laboratory drives technology, and our goal, and from a business point of view, is try to get technology that's optimized, solves a problem, get it to the marketplace, and when in the marketplace, having an impact. So when you look at this diagram here, science and technology, ideas come from observables in the laboratory. Concepts then are developed from those ideas, and many times research and business plans and business cases are developed. And certainly you hear this a lot with startup companies. They have to have a business plan in order to pitch that technology or pitch their business. Feasibility involves a lot of work. Sometimes you may license in technology to help to drive that feasibility. There's translational work that's needed to show performance. Partnering activity is necessary to be able to build all the different players that can help to make sure the feasibility is sticky or has potential to go beyond that. And then you have the traditional development and clinical trial section of product development. And ultimately, it's to get these products on the market to benefit patients, customers, to drive economic value for the business, and certainly to cure disease and clinical conditions that the patients have. So the patient is the centerpiece. Now, one other paradigm that you want to take on here is very similar to the earlier one, but it just gives a little more breakdown of the components, and for you to think about is that idea generation for new products. Sometimes it comes, directly from an observable seen in the laboratory. Sometimes it comes from going to technical meetings, and sometimes it comes from the employees inside the organization coming up with ideas and coming up with different approaches to how to come up with new technologies and new ideas. Those ideas then are evaluated. Concepts are developed, and when concepts are developed, those concepts are tested. All concepts don't make it through the process. If a evaluation of a concept is favorable, there may be some marketing strategy, an early stage marketing strategy applied to this to say, will this solve a problem in the marketplace? Will it solve an unmet need? And if it does, there's some business analysis that goes on. If the business analysis may show elements of profitability, an opportunity to take existing market share or to grow new share, if those are favorable, then it goes into the traditional product development cycle. And the time frame of certainly of these components here may be a little more compressed than at this earlier stage. And then when in the product development cycle, if the product gets through the different product development steps, you might market test it first to seed the market to see if all your assumptions are correct. And then you go into full commercialization. I've included on this slide at least a reference point for you to read a little bit that goes over product development in a broad sense, but there may be other reference materials that you have as well that you want to refer to as you begin to think about what is a plan, what is a business plan, what is the development plan. Now, let's talk a little bit about some business and technical considerations that you want to think about as you are building this case and making the case for your work. And I include some of the questions that that you might ask as a student and participate in this program from a business perspective, and then from a technical perspective. Now, these are not all inclusive, but just to give you some items to focus on. One might ask, well, if you have an existing product portfolio in a given business, what are the gaps that exist in your product portfolio? And why do you need this new program? and what gap in that product portfolio will this new program fill? Secondarily to that, the question might be, well, what are our internal technical capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses? In other words, if there's a gap and you say that gap needs to be filled, do we have the internal resources to be able to deliver on developing the technology, taking it forward? Thirdly, what programs do we have ongoing internally to address the gaps? Do we already have something that's ongoing? Is it behind schedule? Is it up to schedule? If the answer is yes, then maybe we might want to expand that program, or we may want to redirect it. Is there an external partner with capability to help deliver the new product offering quicker than we could by ourselves? And what that means is that many times in business, there are existing programs going along, and then there may be a startup company. There could be some work going on in a new research lab. That could be a new discovery that can accelerate the progress in the work towards delivering this particular technology. So this relates to not only competitive intelligence, but market intelligence as well. What time frame do we have to close that gap and have the new product in the marketplace? Now, why is this important? One is that, let's say for this given technology area or given technology space, that there is another competitor out there working in the same area. And if that competitor gets to the market first, it might close your company out from participating, or the share that you might be able to gain may be not as great as it would be if you were first to market. So the final question then on this business side is, can we capture significant market share with this new product offering? And that ties then back to the business case, the profitability that you think you could get out with this product, and what share is going to allow you to have a product offering that is profitable. On the technical side, a few questions are, do we have the technical team with the right experience and skill sets to be members of the development team? What are the skills needed of that team? What is the technical feasibility status of the technologies? If you've done technical research and you say, look, we can't develop this internally, we've got to go outside. We've identified some outside partners. What's the technical feasibility status? Is it low, emerging, good, mature? And that may be some of the factors that you factor in when you think about the type of partner that you'd like to engage with, or hopefully can develop a relationship with, to co-develop this technology with you. What team member skills are needed to form the complete product delivery team? Now, in this case, we're not talking only about the R&D skill sets, because there may be a spectrum of R&D skill sets that you need, but you need people on the product team from manufacturing, from quality, regulatory, clinical affairs, marketing certainly, and then at a later stage, sales as well. Does the company have the facilities to pilot, scale up the technology, presuming that you're going to be able to do your early feasibility work and unless for the purposes of this discussion, say that you're successful and you've got to scale it up at the pilot scale. But if you scale it up at the pilot scale, the next question is you got to move it then to manufacturing scale, which is a lot larger. So are there scale issues associated with the formulation and performance of these products when you go from bench to pilot to manufacturing scale? Then the last three questions, and I think this one here flows through the whole presentation, is that typically there are expectations of senior management regarding success in these projects, regarding the profitability, regarding the position in the marketplace that you're able to gain. So what are their expectations? And also what's the pressure that they're putting on this team to be successful? What have we promised the marketplace? We are realizing here that we are a successful company. We have a good reputation in the marketplace. So when we speak, customers listen, but they also expect delivery. And even though this is a new assay that we are developing, the marketplace, which are an aspect of the marketplace that are related to competitors, but we have an aspect of the marketplace which relates to the stock market as well. And if we deliver, we're going to have some good upside in our stock price. So that's another aspect of the marketplace that you want to think about. What challenges might be encountered as this project progresses? So you want to, when you're thinking about planning a project, in some ways, it's very similar to planning an experiment or a series of experiments to develop something. You don't do the experiment and then wait to see what problems you might encounter. You try to think ahead and anticipate what the problems might be so you are prepared to solve them when they do arise in a timely manner. Now, for the students, again, as you work through this program, these are some important items that hopefully we want the students to come away with as learnings. And as was mentioned earlier, one of this is to help describe and to build on your leadership ability, not only technical leadership, but business leadership as well. And so these are not all inclusive, but as they relate to this program, they are certainly transportable to many other technical programs that you might have and that you might have an opportunity to participate in. And so the following are I'm going to just read through some of these and give some perspective on them, and then you can certainly come back to me and we can talk further if there's more clarity is needed on any of these. So first is R&D and technology development and technical problem solving. You will be able to gain a lot more perspective, realism, and insights around this area. The reason that this is important is that in many times, those of us who have technical backgrounds, we feel that we can solve problems, but when you're in the industry side and in a product development mode, some problems you don't have a year to solve, and you don't have 2 years to solve, and sometimes you don't have a month to solve. So it depends on the type of problem and the nature of it. That's why the project planning is important. And I just want to emphasize here that project planning is more than just putting the schedule time deliveries down on paper. It is the anticipation of issues, as we mentioned before. It is the collaborations that you're going to need. And it's also factoring in risk and how you might manage the risk. And do you have the resources and skill sets necessary to bring to bear on this concept that you are and product that you are delivering? Timeline management and management of internal stakeholders, R&D, marketing, manufacturing, operation, and sales. The timelines are typically fixed. Sometimes timelines do slip, but there's consequences of those timelines slipping, so you want to factor that into your plan. Collaborative co-development partnerships and management of that partnership. When you move to the point of developing a partner that may be involved in helping you with some components of this technology, you have to develop the partnership, the relationship with them. If there are license fees that are necessary that they require in order for you to utilize their technology, that's got to be factored in. And then you've got the relationship management of that partnership to make sure that the relationship is a win-win relationship for the external partner as well as your business. And then there are some aspects of business development that will factor in here as well. New process technology development. If this is something that technology that is new to the world, there may not be existing processes that you can rely on, but there may be alternative processes that are similar. That, for example, pharmaceutical manufacturing technologies for preparing tablets, for example, that technology might exist, but it may not work for biological components. It may work for small molecule components, but there may be adaptations of that process that you can make to bring to bear on this existing technology. So that's something to think about. Manufacturing scale up, as we mentioned. How do you go about marketing, seeding the market, positioning yourself in the market? And then competitors aren't sitting idly by waiting for you to come up with your program. They are developing their own programs, because once a new opportunity becomes available in the marketplace, competitors find out about it through a whole range of mechanisms, through meetings, through publications, et cetera, and they're fierce. They won't share as well. So you're going to be competing fiercely with external partners to make sure that you can get the market share of this new product opportunity for your business versus them. International reputation is important. There's a don't want to fail pressure, not only on the team, but also on the company. So when you're developing a new product from a business perspective, it's not just the product alone. The work has beneficial benefit for the corporation and the corporation's reputation to be a leading edge company and to deliver life-saving or life-improving therapies or diagnostics. Outcomes and effective clinical performance. At the end of the day, if the clinical outcomes are not effective, it's a no-go, obviously. You won't get regulatory approval. So there are certain aspects of the accuracy, the precision of the technology is going to be critical for regulatory acceptance, as well as the other clinical claims that you're making about the performance of the product. That's important for clinicians. Synthetic reagents and recombinant protein technology, as mentioned earlier, is something that you'll need to learn more about and think more about, particularly if the predecessor technologies are animal-based materials. So there are advantages of going to synthetic materials, but there are also nuances associated with synthetic materials that have to be overcome as well. Building, as we discussed earlier, a strong, agile, cross-functional team to deliver the technology and product to the marketplace. How do you go about building a team? How do you go about maintaining that team? How do you deal with conflict in the team? Is something that you also want to learn from this effort to give you additional perspective on that very important aspect of team leadership. Leadership and management of the team. What is your style? How does your style need to change? How does your style need to improve over time? What are the positive aspects of your style, or the aspects of your style that maybe you may want to call on one of your other team members to lead some aspects of the work versus you, depending on how you evaluate the ability of each member of the team to contribute to the program. Management by influence versus direct line responsibility. In many cases with project teams, all the members of the team are not direct line reports. Many of them have direct line reports to other groups within the company. So you have to manage by influence versus direct line responsibility. The skill set difference between managed by influence and direct line responsibility can be significant and from time to time. So how do you balance these two? What are the program management tools you're going to need to get through the project? And how do you deal with pressure? How do you function under pressure? How do you keep your focus under pressure? Managing market introduction timing is also really critical. When should you market it? What are the features of the product that you can position at which time? So market position is important. Where, what countries, what regions are targeted for initial introduction versus secondary introduction. And then managing the expectations of senior management. Sometimes with projects, particularly if it's a life-saving project or first of its kind project, the expectations of senior management are going to be, look, we can deliver this, and they're going to make all types of promises to the marketplace. Your role is not so much to try to downplay the expectation that this is going to be great, but you want to make sure that the technology and its capability is not oversold, or at least to manage, then gauge how and when, what the messages are around the project and its capability. It's very important. Contingency planning simply means things are going to go wrong. There's no way around it. And how do you have contingency planning? What are the capabilities? What are the approaches that you're going to be able to implement and to plan contingencies when things go wrong. And you can develop and come up with maybe some scenarios of how things went wrong in this project and how you dealt with correcting those issues when they came up. Personal credibility is always on the line, both inside and outside of the company. Intellectual property, having strong intellectual property is going to make life a little better in terms from a competitive position, but intellectual property alone doesn't stop good competitors from figuring out other ways of how to other ways to introduce their version of a given technology. But putting a fence around your program with strong intellectual property gives a huge advantage to you. Keeping an eye on disruptive technology and the potential of other programs out there that may come along, even though you're at the leading edge, there's always someone else working on a new idea that could disrupt your technology. And then managing budgets. How do you deal with budgets and the possibility of having enough money at the right time to deliver the programs? So I want to talk a little bit about then technology S-curves and a little bit more about the aspects of disruptive technology to keep in mind as we work through this case. And the impact of technology always advances over time. I'm sure you're very familiar with technology S-curves, but businesses must constantly adapt to the impact of new technology or the risk of losing existing business. Typically, internal R&D needs to partner to develop and acquire external developed technology for the business to remain competitive and relevant. And so as you look at building this case, and you've got to look at the technology space, the business space, and to say, not only what are you doing to develop this plan yourself to deliver this new system, this new assay, with its technology components, but how are you thinking about other technologies out there that you have to also worry about that may come along at some point in time and disrupt your business? And maybe you have to think about having another project in an early stage that's coming along so that you can maintain and be on the leading edge of this technology S-curve, because typically for technologies, there's an existing performance of a technology, the performance increases, it plateaus out at some time, and then there's a new breakthrough that comes along at some point in time, and it starts another technology S-curve. This is the challenge of helping a business to grow and not having your eyes closed and being asleep along the way. We've seen that in many companies over time. But how do you stay relevant and ahead of the curve, so to speak, as your business and your program goes forward? So one other example here is management attention and the reality of disruptive technologies is something that you're going to have to factor in here a little bit, because it's not only about, this case is not only about developing the plan and putting that project plan together and that strategy together, the strategic narrative, but it's also a little bit about, when you're doing a project and a program plan, is how you're going to stay a little bit ahead of the curve, at least from a planning point of view. This is an example that is an old example that's taken from some of Clayton Christensen's work. I have sort of this reference here that work reference this work, and it gives the sort of the classical cassette player technology that evolved over time, and then of course from there came CDs, and then from there MP3s, and now sort of digital technologies and iPads and everything else today. But it's the same paradigm. You can make these S-curves go a long ways out. And the aspect that you want to think about here as it relates to this bioscience example is that, technologies in many cases overlap. New ones grow slowly due to low investment. Then those products get mature because they're generating a lot of profits. And sometimes, interestingly enough, profitability in business is something that all businesses have to watch out for. It's great to be profitable, but in many cases, when you are profitable, very profitable in this range, it's hard to start thinking about a technology that's just emerging down here. And so most businesses, and many of them now, are figured out ways to stay abreast in checking what's going on in the marketplace in the startup world, what's going on at the university world, or what do we have where a scientist or engineer in our organization is thinking about some crazy idea that could be next. So you want to pull those all together. So I think that the pace of change and innovation varies over time between the industries. And sometimes there's work that's going on outside of the industry that could be a great opportunity for you as you move forward. So I'd like to have some aspect of how you're thinking about disruption, disruptive possibilities that tie into this case. Doesn't need to be a large part of the case, but you want to factor that in terms of, and give some perspective on how you might maintain a technology performance or move to a new S-curve in performance to keep your business growing. And so I have a couple more slides now. So some key takeaways then is that as you're developing this work, keep in mind that there's a patient out there, okay? The patient is the benefactor of bioscience, technology, and product development. The technology needs to be safe and effective for successful clinical outcomes. That's the top business goal. Having a balanced portfolio of products for the business provides a good pathway for sustainable growth. Innovation for the sake of innovation is not enough. It's got to be applied to solve a clinical problem. Developing strong alliances and partnerships is a critical necessity of good new product development. Strong intellectual property is going to provide a ring fence and provide some protection for the longevity of your product and technology in the marketplace. You got to always keep an eye on the competition, not only the big existing competition, but emerging competition. Being first to market at best, being a fast follower to leading competition is sometimes employed by some competitors. Having a strong cross-functional team that can execute your product plan is key. And in building and maintaining a cross-functional culture of teamwork is important, not only for this program that you're developing, but also for the future of the business enterprise that you're engaging with. So here are just some recommended readings that I've taken just straight, from the internet, and I thought that these would be important just for some reference framework, so that you wouldn't have to go out and just find your own material initially, but it can be sort of a foundation that you can build upon and expand upon. These are not all inclusive at all, but just to have some good placeholders for perspective as you move about this project. So I'm going to stop there. I look forward to further engaging with you and look forward to participating with you in this work, and wishing you much success. Thank you.
Dr. Bryant Moore, what a fantastic presentation. And I can tell you that, and we've had these discussions offline, that, as you know, I come from industry, and I worked at the global level in strategic direction. And I got to tell you that you have synthesized a beautiful presentation here, which is very much encapsulating. I know you were in medical devices, I was in pharmaceuticals, but the bottom line is the SOP is very similar. So on behalf of InnovATEBIO, I just want to thank you so much for your presentation today. And I know that our participants of the Leadership Institute will be very excited to actually meet you in person when the in-person part of this happens. Tom?
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Dr. Moore. I, for one, absolutely appreciate the presentation. I'm very much taken by the S-curve for disruptive technologies, especially your example of the cassette. And I do remember one of my first vehicles did have an 8-track in there. And so, we're going to add that one right into the mix. But in all seriousness, it's been a great presentation, and on behalf of our participants as well, and InnovATEBIO, I thank you for your time and your contribution to our Leadership Academy.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Russ. I've welcomed the opportunity to participate, and look forward to further engagement as well. Thank you.
Thank you.